Hey, 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 this is Kay Worthing. Tonight we're going to talk about moving forward. And so we aren't always conscious of when we need to do that. And what I mean by being conscious is we might know deep down that we need to move forward, but we may not have the courage um, and tenacity and forethought to just say, how do I do this, right? You might think, this doesn't feel good to me anymore, but not know that this is it. That's a sign that it's time to move forward, whether it be from an unhealthy relationship with a friend or an intimate partner, um, or a workplace that you are in that no longer serves you. Being in a toxic work relationship can be just as detrimental to our physical and mental well-being as being in a toxic relationship. As a matter of fact, having experienced that on both ends, I can tell you that they're very much similar. And so when we aren't conscious of that, though, we don't always tie that toxic work relationship to our toxic personal relationship. But when you have grown up in a toxic environment to where your home life is toxic, your relationships are toxic, your friendships are toxic, 9 times out of 10, you will find yourself in toxic work relationships and have no idea that you're even in that cycle. You'll think it's normal to be working in an environment where people aren't uplifting to you, and so they can be very damaging in how they engage with you, supervisors, peers, co-workers, and you not realize that this is not a good place for my own personal development, right? We should work. You should want to work in an environment that brings out a certain aspirations within yourself. You should want to work in an environment that naturally brings out the best in you, where your creativity just flows. Okay. I remember getting this position in the school district that I'm most recently, that I've worked for the last 10 years. But I remember getting an elevated position in central office, and it was a position that I applied for 4 years in a row. So I was super excited about working in this particular position. And shortly after getting that position, I mean, within 6 months of getting that position, I soon realized that I went from good to toxic real quick. And I say good to toxic, not because that particular situation that I left was great. I loved working with the students that I work with, but the adults oftentimes, not all, but some were very toxic. Not all adults learn how to be co-workers. The same type of adults that you engage with from an elementary perspective, meaning when you're in high school, when you're in elementary school, those same type of behaviors that you exhibit or see from individuals at that level when you are a student is oftentimes the same type of relationship that you witness or engage or display, even if you're the toxicity person, right? When you get to a position when you're working in an environment with your peers and or your superiors and so forth. And so you may not realize that you're in a toxic environment if you've come from toxicity, if you still in your core have that toxicity just fueling through you. And so how do you know that? That really wasn't the direction that I was going to go with tonight's conversation, but I really feel like you need to know, like, if you're in a toxic relationship with your employer, if you're miserable, when you go to work, if you have been like me and you sit in your car for minutes, hours, sometimes at a time, dreading going into that place. You know, I've gotten off the elevator at times and had anxiety attacks because I just couldn't muster up the strength to want to go down the hallway because of what I feared was on the other side of that door. Not because I was afraid of anyone on that side of the door, but just the toxicity on the other side of that door. And not wanting to start my day off like that, you know. Might wake up and pray and meditate, and you do all that to put yourself in a good place, in a good position, but all that go right out the window when you still get up and take yourself into an office or in an environment that's toxic, you know. It's like praying and meditating and then you rolling over to a man that's beating you, right? That's a physical example of an emotional example that can be just as detrimental to your emotional well-being as a abusive relationship can be to your physical and emotional well-being. So that toxicity can affect you physically as well, right? Stress kills. Having lost my brother at 10 years ago, and he was a year older than me, so but to nothing but stress, right? He came home from work stressed out, and I know he was stressed because I talked to him the day before he passed, so I knew all the worries that he had on his shoulders, all the responsibilities that he had on his shoulders that was stressing him out. And he went to a job that he hated and came home and laid down and did not wake up at 36 years old. That was the first glimpse I got at not wanting to do something for the rest of my life that I would hate or that was not healthy for me. That was the first glimpse I got at wanting to live my life fully. And but it wasn't until my mother passed 6 months ago and I realized that after she worked 40 years and paid into a system, Social Security, if you will, doing jobs that she deplored to some degree, you know. She was a maid for many years, cleaning houses. I remember when I was a kid, 10 to 12 years old, I would go to work with her and, you know, they'd pay her $30 for a day worth of cleaning mansions. I'm talking about these are huge mansions, you know, and she would spend all day long cleaning up these people's houses and they would give her $30 for that. And I knew at 12 that wasn't a lot of money. And I know that as much as I enjoyed seeing these beautiful houses that these people, I think that was the best part of her taking me to work with her, was that I could see another way of living, right? But I knew that she wasn't happy doing that. But she worked many, many years doing things that she did not love. She was a child care provider, so she loved working with kids, but it was all the red tape that came with that, that she struggled with, that gave her pause in regards to the work that she was doing. But the purpose of me mentioning her story is she worked 40 years and paid into a system that did not serve her in the end. And so after 40 years of working for a system, paying into Social Security, she was barely able to pay for her own primary needs when it came time for her to claim Social Security for health reasons. So she retired early at 63, which means she got the minimum benefits. But even then, she was making less than her next door neighbor who hadn't worked a year in his life, but because he spent most of his time on drugs during his earlier years and was considered disabled by the state, he got Social Security and made more money than my mother. That may have only been like $80 more, but it was still, imagine how that made her feel, right? She worked 40 years, paid into the system for 40 years, and was getting less than a person who spent most of their life on drugs. And this ain't about the person that's on drugs. It's just about the fact that you can work your ass off for a system, and the reward is simply, it doesn't exist, to be honest. It's a trick to make you believe that going to work and clocking in every day and being an employee is going to serve you. Being an employee serves the company that you're working for. When my mother passed, she passed 2 years after when she retired. So she passed at 65. And I called Social Security to find out. They used to pay death benefits of at least $255. And, you know, we had a small policy for her, but I still called to find out. And she paid 40 years into this system. Certainly, they're going to give her something towards death benefits. And maybe there's some Social Security benefits that maybe her children or grandchildren especially could perhaps benefit from. And the answer was no, no, and no. And it wasn't that I needed the benefits, but it was just a matter of some level of hope that she didn't pay in all those years for Social Security to say, thank you, but we ain't got nothing for you. She ain't here to get that money no more. So, you know, we just gonna keep that on in our pockets. And then you think about how much folks on the Hill gross, right? The Nancy Pelosi's, you know, all of the people that sit on the Senate, and I like Nancy Pelosi, so this is not a diss towards her, but it's just when you consider how much these people gross and take home every year, and those who are actually, you know, working their asses off most of their life and retiring with barely enough to feed themselves. Like, if it wasn't for me being in a financially secure position, semi-secure, because we ain't never secure when you're working for the man, understand that, okay? But when in a semi-secure position where I was making a decent living, to be able to help my mother with certain things, it's just no telling, you know. She still depended on the system to help take care of her in her later years, right? She depended on subsidized housing in her later years because Social Security wouldn't even allow her to pay rent, you know, or a decent mortgage with what they were paying her. And Social Security, after paying 40 years into this system now, I take issue with that. But it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to, that's not the battle that I want to fight. I have no desire to go to the White House and battle them about how much they, are really getting over. Now you practically got to be 85. You got to put 85 years in, meaning the number of years that you work plus your age has to at least equal 85 before you even eligible for Social Security these days. So you can't just come right out of college and go into education, teaching at 21, which is what a lot of people used to do, and work 25 to 30 years and retire at 55, 60 years old because you had worked and paid into the system for 30 years. 30 years. Now think about that. You worked 30 years. You deserve to retire. You deserve to relax, especially when you have served children or others. When you spent 30 years serving others, why shouldn't you be able to retire and spend the next 10, 20 years enjoying yourself, working part-time if you choose, and just, you paid into the system, and they had no problem taking out money out of your check every time you got it. And if you added it up, you realize, they took millions from you. And I think about what's left. What are your options? What are your alternatives to paying into a system that will not serve you? And so when you think about the message of my lesson tonight, which is on moving forward, I want you to consider what your other options are. And I'm not discouraging anyone from having a job or a career, but I am encouraging you to only do things that you're passionate about and that you love, and that if you're not, don't spend 40 years doing it. Don't spend 4 years doing it. Don't spend 4 days doing something you do not love and that you're not passionate about and that does not serve you. Don't stay in any relationships that are toxic. Don't stay in any, don't stay with a company that does not value you. We are in what they consider the resignation era. There are more people resigning from employment today than ever in history. And I do believe that that's because a lot of us got a chance to work from home for a full year, and we're gaining a certain sense of peace in that time, and then just learn what's most important, right? I lost my mom to COVID, and while there's a lot of complexities behind that, in regards to what really killed her, there's still just a sense of an appreciation for life and wanting to live life to the fullest and not allow anything or anyone to get in the way of you living your best self. And so I encourage you all to move forward in wherever you are in this moment. If that company won't give you a promotion, find another company that will. If that relationship does not serve you, if that person doesn't treat you the way that God wants you to be treated, that you want to be treated, move on. We deserve so much better. And the key is you got to know it. You got to know it. So today's lesson is just move on and move forward. Move forward. It doesn't mean you leave that place. It just means move forward in that place that you're in. And so I encourage you all to do that. And I hope that you're able to do so in a spirit that serves you well. This is Kay Worthy reminding you that you are worthy. And so I bid you peace and blessings and great growth in your future endeavors. Take care.